for that project, we got to travel around Indonesia and kind of build a network for women against anti-corruption. They're called Saya Perempuan Anti Korupsi. And
but it's just fascinating to me how different our cultures are, and how we can also get along so well, because we have Australians and Indonesians are both really quite laid back and relaxed. I really love that and I think that's a way that we work well together.
Who would you like to be known? Because these are the most important things in the first 1 or 2 years in your career, and the rest after 2 or 3 years, these things don't matter anymore, unless you want to restart a career into a career in a different line.
Said something about self-awareness, I guess. How to maintain a little bit more on how to be restrained, I guess, because I'm just assuming that people who are who are young maybe have this kind of excitement, and it's just that many of the communication is just a little bit of a more just the burst up with excitement, and then mostly the kind of a impression that people who are we network with, it seems that they're a little bit too eager, I guess. Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. So you have 2 questions. The first is the difference between online and offline networking, and then the second is how to contain your eagerness as a young professional when you meet somebody who's a household name, let's say, in your industry. Is that correct? So answering the first question, I think before the pandemic, because of the nature of the work that we are doing, we also communicated a lot via Zoom or email with our collaborators around the world. And so just making sure that first, you set a regular time to check in, respond to email. My go-to, my rule of thumb is that for people that I closely collaborate with, so this is probably, it can be seen as like elitist for a lot of people, but there are collaborators that I consider as the key stakeholders, the key contacts. So my rule of thumb for those collaborators is that I have to respond to their email within a certain time. It cannot be more than 48 hours for me. So I think the responsiveness has been largely appreciated by the people that I collaborate with. And again, going back to setting up a regular check-in. So I will schedule some time for us to meet once a month if it's not too urgent. Recently, I've been working closely with some key contacts at the New Zealand Ministry of Health. So I talk to her like almost every week. And again, having some personal touch, like asking about her family, asking about how life is in Auckland. And so just asking those questions that are not related to work, I make sure that I do that. Is also greatly appreciated. And I think, I don't recommend this for people, but she also has my, WhatsApp number, and sometimes we talk on WhatsApp. So I think it has helped with our work, but the caveat with that is that you have to set boundaries. If you share your personal number, that you don't answer after a certain hour. And so this is something that I have come to learn as well, to maintain, my sanity and also productivity. I think that's important. And the role of, video calls will grow because of the pandemic. And you are right that there's kind of like a barrier between us. But I believe that humans are very, are adaptive to changes. And I think we will find ways to, adapt to this new, experience. And I think largely right now, although, you have that Zoom fatigue and etc., but I think it is manageable. You don't always have to call each other, you can also just simply email and check in. I think consistency is probably the key to maintain, connection during the pandemic and during, the online period of networking. And to answer your second question, I don't see that as a bad thing, like being eager. Actually, I think it shows that, and it shows enthusiasm. But of course, yes, there's again that balance between like being self-confident and between being confident and being aware. And it also, again, is tied back to why are you there? What is your goal? Like, do you want to just talk to this person because, they're, a household name? Like, what do you really want to get out of the conversation? I think I personally, if it's not because of work, I don't really go seek, if it's a networking, unless I have something really important that I want to ask them, I don't usually, purposefully go to talk to that person. And again, someone who's really famous or who is a household name in their industry, they meet a lot of people. And so most people in the room would try to talk to them, right? And then first, will they really remember you? Like, among all the many faces, you have to be really special for that. And all of you I know are special in your own way, but just logically, I think, people have a limited capacity to remember things or people. So I'd rather just go talk to other people that I find interesting or have different experience than me. But if you feel like you really want to talk to that person, I would always recommend, to bring up their work and how their work has impacted you. So it's not just, I know you're a big person, but really what you like about their work and how it has impacted your own work. So I hope that answered your questions.
I'm interested with your background on the one in Dharma Siswa scholarship, and then now you ended up still get involved with Australia-Indonesia like a relationship. But do you have like something like the biggest challenge that you face when you live, or maybe try to know or try to explore about Indonesia? What's the biggest challenge that you found on your experience?
The biggest challenge with living there or with connecting with Indonesia, or I guess the biggest.
Atau mungkin in specific topics that you find a really hard to understand, or maybe hard to get yourself involved in it, but you are really trying, or maybe put much effort to get involved in that.
Look, actually I have a strange one. The thing that I find the hardest when it comes to Indonesia is speaking formally and using tata bahasa. I cannot get it. I have learned formal Indonesian several times, and I just find it extremely challenging. And no one really speaks formal Indonesian. People don't speak like that. And so when I was working at Komnas Perempuan, I would have to translate formal documents, and I found that really challenging because all day, every day, people are speaking a different language to formal Indonesian. So that disparity between how people use language and what you learn, I think is really challenging. And it's very hard to find a way to learn informal or like conversational Indonesian unless you're in Indonesia. So anytime I've learned Indonesian in a academic setting, I learn things that I don't use as often, so it doesn't segment as much. So I find that challenging. And I have to say, when I worked at Komnas Perempuan, sometimes I did not understand the context of what was going on in meetings or in certain circumstances because of the cultural differences. And that was a good learning curve, but there are some things that I'm still confused about, and I think I will forever be confused about. But it's just fascinating to me how different our cultures are, and how we can also get along so well, because we have Australians and Indonesians are both really quite laid back and relaxed. You know, I really love that about, and I think that's a way that we work well together. And yeah, so I don't know, it's challenging to go from that relaxed state where you have easy conversation and there's a lot of flow between us, and then to go to these formal settings where there's rules that I don't quite understand. So that's been challenging. Thanks.
Great. Clarice, you want to ask the next question?
Yeah, I was going to ask a question.
Yeah.
So you obviously made this really cool video, but you don't necessarily have like a creative background, right? Like you didn't study like video editing or like design, which I'm sure that a lot of people kind of fall into that category, although they'd really like to be able to do that sort of stuff. So do you have any advice for anybody on the call today for how you kind of develop the skills or get the confidence to do that? Because I'm sure many people have, you know, a really interesting idea, or they sort of, you know, might be working in a particular kind of formal sector, but want to do a sort of creative endeavor that's connecting Australia and Indonesia, but don't necessarily know how. So from your experience putting this great Nyla video together, what would you say to people?
That's a really good question. And you don't need those formal skills. If you have seen or do watch that video, you'll notice it's not great quality. And none of my videos are like fabulous quality, because the important thing is the content, is your ideas. So your ideas and experiences are valuable. So if you have, I don't know, some artwork or music or a script or whatever type of creative pursuit you have, if you can resource ways to get people to help you, that's how I did it. I just asked friends who had some skills, but I made that video with 2 other people, and one of them turned up on the day. Basically didn't really do much. Even the lines that I told them to say, they just kind of ad-libbed, like made it up. So it was really just one person who I relied on who had the skills. So I skill shared with them. So yeah, you can share your skills with someone else in order to swap them. So resourcing outside of your own capacity, but also don't be afraid, because it's easier than you think, and you can make mistakes. And the value is in the content that you create and the ideas that you have. That's where it's interesting. You don't need to make something perfect or excellent quality to start with. So yeah.
And I wanted to ask you a question about, you know, obviously a lot of the mentees in particular are kind of thinking about options for study, or like whether they should do a master's degree or something like that. And I don't know whether, you know, what your university background was, but how important do you think that your university background is, or that your study background is, relevant to your professional life? You know, a lot of people say, oh, if I want to get into business, I should do a business degree, but that isn't necessarily the case. So I'd be interested in what your reflections are on that.
Oh, mate, look, look, when I chose uni, it was purely basically reason one, just wanted to get out of my parents' house. The only scholarship, the university that gave me the scholarship was that. Second, the UK, having lived life in Australia, I always thought the UK was an old country, and thought I'd be exotic there, walking around, you know, looking like I am with an Aussie accent. I thought I'd have a good social life. But in hindsight, if I was to redo my life, I'd actually be telling myself these things. University has 3 aspects to it. The science, you can read the same book in Nias or in Melbourne, same outcome. It's the method of what they want to teach you that actually differs. Second, the network. Some universities are really great in catapulting you to different networks of, let's say, the development, World Bank, UN, the oil and gas industry. Don't do that, that's a dirty business. The banking, and then the trademark. Who would you like to be known? Because these are the most important things in the first 1 or 2 years in your career, and the rest after 2 or 3 years, these things don't matter anymore, unless you want to restart a career into a career in a different line.